WACs are Incoterms. To respond WAC aims Incoterms is term that comes from international commercial terms, which in Spanish mean términos de comercio internacional. You must know that as its names in this case, they are the terms and requirements of a sale and purchase transaction international. But to this, they are in shares of stipulating when and where the transmission of risks and the obligation in terms of cause occurs, as well as who bears them and other factors in relation to this type of transaction. These terms are not always the same or remain stable, but from time to time, usually 10 years. They undergo undies to be able to leave behind things that are no longer used because they have conditions that are not very adapted to this market. Since January 1, 2020, import then export are regulated by the new Incoterms 2020, leaving behind some of the old terms and introducing some oxide. They were created with the International Chamber of Commerce back in 1996. So there tend that have been worked for a long time and have been operating hard leading with the announcement on board of the seller.
Classification of Incoterms. Group E. Delivery on the part of the selling program, the buyer the merchandise, it is on facilities. Those of the seller, which means that it is most beneficial term for transport from the sellers. Point of view that he will not have to do anything other than unpack the merchandise and wait for the buyer to hear it to theirs. From the point, all rich expenses derived from international transport are borne by the buyer. Group F. Delivery indirect. The seller made the good available to the driver. That contract will pays for it will be chosen by the party. Indirect for the seller does not pay for the means of transport.
Group C. Delivery indirect. His selling party will be in charge of paying for the main transport vehicle to be used for transport. However, it should be noted that if the product suffers any damage or loss during the journey, neither party is responsible for it, as is the case with the payment of additional costs that may take place at the time the merchandise is being transported. Group D. Delivery direct. Here, the seller is the one who will bear the cost and risk of the transfer of the goods until it reaches the destination agreed in the contract. By the time they have reached this place, the danger and expense will be borne by the buyer. Types of Incoterms 2020. The 11 types of Incoterms effective as of January 1st, 2020 are EXW, FCA, FES, FOB, CFR, CIF, CPT, CIP, DPU, DAP, and DDP. EXW, X-Works. X-Word Decoten 2020 EXW should only be used when the seller delivers the merchandise at its facilities if it is done elsewhere. Another term should be used. FCA Free Carrier. The seller delivers the merchandise to the buyer at a previously agreed point and assumes the cost and risk until the merchandise is delivered. The buyer is the one who assumes the expense from loading on board to unloading. FES, free alongside ship. This Incoterm is only used for maritime transport, normally for special products due to their cargo needs. It is not very common in palletized or containerized loads. FOB, free on board. The FOB Incoterms is only used for maritime transport and should not be used for merchandise that goes in containers since responsibility is transferred when the merchandise is loaded on board the ship. CFR Costs, Insurance and Freight. Used in maritime transport, the selling party is responsible for the cost until the merchandise reaches its destination. However, when the risk is loaded into the ship, it becomes the responsibility of the buyer. CIF Costs, Insurance and Freight. This Incoterms includes a novelty in its updated version of 2020, referring to insurance coverage. That is, the insurance has to cover until the merchandise reaches the destination port. Furthermore, this Incoterm is only used in maritime transport. It is one of the most used since it determines the custom value. CPT Carriage Paid To. The seller bears all expense until the merchandise is made available to the seller. The buyer takes care of import procedures and insurance in case it is contracted. The CPT Incoterms is suitable for all modes of transport. CIP Carriage and Insurance Paid. Transportation and insurance paid up to there is a modification in the insurance coverage, since the products have to be insured until they reach their final destination. DPU Delivered Place Unloaded. The novelty consists in that delivery alternatives are expensed. Signed after the update in 2020, deliveries can be made in any other place that is previously agreed. DAP Delivery at Place. The exporter assumes expense and risks until the delivery of the goods, with the exception of the costs derived from the importation of the merchandise that are attributed to the buyer, compatible with any transport. DDP Delivery Duty Paid. Used for all transport, the seller assumes absolutely all the costs and risks of the export operation.
Changer to Incoterm 2020. The changer of the Incoterm 2020 with respect to the Incoterm 2010 the Incoterm that delivered at terminal is replaced by DBU delivery at place upload. The most significant thing about this modification is the name change, since the responsibilities and obligations are the same, but the new DBU name allows delivery to be established anywhere without to be especially at the terminal. But it could also be agreed in the contract if the parties so wish. New conditions are set when contracting is cheap name for sick and SIP Incoterm. In the the FCA Incoterms that is query out with Gusmary Transport. Now the buyer can ask the shipping company of its allegiance to accept the billing of layering with the announcement on board of the seller.
Tips for using Incoterms properly. Agree on the specific there with the other party before starting transportation. Make sure that the term with is suitable for the issues in medium. Confirm that both parties understand the obligation indicated in the international sale contract. Indicate without errors the type agreed in the commercial invoice for the shipment. Periodically check the term visit and review your right obligation, if necessary.
Update expected in the application of Incoterms 2020. On the other hand, there are also some factors that have changes with respect to the application of Incoterms 2020. To consider the BL house value, it must be indicated in the document that is governed by the USAP. This 600 sister rules the regulation documentary credits because it's the only one that emitted the house mode. The Incoterms use must always be indication in the sales contract. In this case, Incoterms 2020 signs in it is no specialty Incoterms of the years 2010 or even through 2000 may be applied. What Incoterms should they use? It is recommended to use Intercoms with the help of the transport company with the personal specialist in the type of operations in order to minimize the risk posed by import or incomplete use.
Incoterms must with international transport. FAS, free alongside ship, Franco alongside the ship every port. Here is the seller who is obliged to place the merchandise next to the ship in the port. It is the selling party who must carry out all the export management. Instead, it is the buying party that bears the risk in terms of travel, cargo, and great cost. F. O. B. Free on board. Free on board named port of loading. The selling party will load the product on the ship while all the risk and cost won't be merchandise have been loaded are borne by the buyer. FCA. Frequent the seller delivers the product that have previously passed through the export office designated by the buyer at agreed place if the delivery takes place at the seller. Facilities it is he who assumes the cost or the cargo in the transfer. On the other hand, if it is cleared out and another place, the selling party is not responsible. CFR. Cost and freight. Cost and freight designate port of destination. The seller bears the cost and cargo until it reaches the named port. The risk is transferred to the buying party as soon as the products have been loaded onto the ship. CIF. Cost, insurance, freight. Insurance, freight, cost, insurance, and freight designate for the seller pays insurance and freight to deliver the wood to the designated place.
Hello, my name is Yajemit Rojas and I will talk about the objective of the Incoterms. The main objective of the Incoterms is to establish the criteria about the distributions of the cost, as well as the transmission of risks between the buyer and the seller in the context of the international commercial transactions. It is important to note that Incoterms are not a mandatory legal script. Rather, they are a series of standardized conditions accepted by both the buyer and the seller. Thanks to these standardizations, both parties are aware at like times of the requirements to which they must await. Basically, Incoterms are charges or regulations for fundamental aspects in an international sales contract. Delivery of goods is an obligation of sellers on one destination as being agreed with the buyer. In turn, the array don't spice deliveries is definite when the measure is the transferred directly to the buyer and is governed. Under the terms E and D is the uses case the items are delivered those an intermediary and carried or freighted for further the terms corresponding to the types of delivery F and Z phonetics risks. This aspect fundamentally within Incoterms systems insights the basis of transference risks and in many cases also specials takes place and the place and time defining a country to control and the count corresponding Incoterm. Demonstrations of the expenses normally. The seller is responsible of the necessary expenses to so that the merchandise reaches in the destination's incorrect condition, while the buyer bear the remaining expenses. Producers and customers generally the sellers and the one who is in charge of the export documents. Expensing in the case of the SX Works factory in the country which does not have customer cleaner for export and the authority which the buyer is responsible for the export. In the case costing ahead or freight for already use usually here in the country of dispatch on the hardly the corresponding processes. In the rest of intercoms, in customer cleansing necessary, so the sport will be the responsibility of the sellers.